Las Vegas, the name itself was a promise, wasn't it? An empire forged in the desert, built on pure, unadulterated opportunity. But now, in the year 2025, the cracks are showing in that shimmering facade. That empire is contracting, and the very people who were its lifeblood are the ones left paying the ultimate price. You see, the flood of visitors has slowed to a trickle, and the shockwaves are being felt far from the famous Strip. Every hotel lobby, every casino pit, every restaurant whispers the same grim tale. Fewer faces, fewer hours on the clock, and paychecks that just don't stretch as far. Entire departments that once buzzed with the energy of steady crowds and the promise of a good night's tips now just face echoing halls and slashed schedules. And in this countdown, we're pulling back the curtain on the 10 jobs vanishing from Las Vegas at an alarming rate. And trust me, the one at the top of our list is going to leave you speechless. Kicking things off at number 10, the first casualties in this new reality: valet and parking staff. Remember the feeling? Pulling up to the grand entrance of a lavish strip resort, seeing that line of valets, sharp in their crisp jackets, greeting you with a smile, opening your door with a flourish, and whisking your car away. It was all part of the magic, the core of the Las Vegas fantasy. It was the feeling that you were the star of the show, that someone was right there to take care of everything. For decades, being a valet wasn't just a job, it was a career with heavy tips and reliability. It even came with a certain level of status. But that fantasy is dissolving. Fewer visitors are driving to the Strip, parking fees have gone through the roof, and the tourism tide is pulling back. As a result, the demand for valet services hasn't just dropped, it has completely cratered. We're talking about entire valet operations being shuttered at resorts that once built their brand on that kind of exclusive, personal service. Just look at MGM. They recently admitted to eliminating valet and concierge services at a staggering 6 of their prime properties on the Strip. And it's not just the high-end places. Several non-luxury hotels have followed suit, letting go of their valet and bell staff. You have to understand, this isn't about just 1 or 2 people losing their jobs. This is a systemic shift. For these valet attendants, it's about so much more than a lost paycheck. They're losing the pride that came with the uniform, the reliable flow of tips that paid the bills, and they're losing a crucial lifeline. That job was often a clear, steady path to climbing the ladder into management. That bridge is now gone. So many of these workers built their entire lives on a single, simple assumption: that the Strip would always be buzzing. I spoke with one former valet, and he told me, "We used to literally run from car to car, non-stop, for a full shift every single day. Now," he said, "we're just told there are no more guests to park, which means no more revenue and no more work." That same uniform, once a symbol of pride, is now just hanging useless in a closet, as some resorts bring parking in-house. They're installing automated ticket machines, setting up remote check-ins, using digital parking validation, every single step designed to eliminate the need for a human being. For the people who worked there, the message from the top couldn't be clearer: your role is expendable. Think about it, valet has always been a frontline job. It's visible, it's human, it's a powerful symbol of service. So when a job like that starts to disappear, it's not just a sign of cost cutting, it signals a fundamental change in the city's very identity. In just the last 5 years, insiders say many Las Vegas resorts have slashed their valet teams by anywhere from 30 to a staggering 50%. That's coming straight from staffing insiders. The takeaway here is chilling. When a city built on hospitality can no longer justify having a human being greet you, the cracks are no longer just cosmetic. The valet and parking staff are the canaries in the coal mine, and their loss is a stark signal of just how far this city has had to lower its standards. Most guests might not even notice they're gone, but for those inside the industry, it was the first quiet, unnerving warning that something much bigger was on the horizon. Number 9, the housekeepers, left with nothing but empty rooms. For as long as these hotel towers have stood, housekeepers have been their silent, unseen backbone. It was their meticulous, tireless work that transformed the chaos of a checked-out room into pristine order. They were the reason guests became loyal customers and towers became symbols of luxury. They cleaned 24/7, 24/7, turning sheets, dusting frames, stripping and remaking hundreds of rooms a day, all without a shred of fanfare. But now, with hotel occupancy plummeting and entire wings of guest rooms being shuttered, their shifts are simply vanishing overnight. Entire towers are literally being locked down. Corridors that were once bustling are now just gathering dust, and rooms sit vacant for weeks on end. Hotels that used to run full cleaning teams from 5 in the morning until midnight now are trying to get by with skeleton crews, or in some cases, skipping cleaning services altogether. And guests are noticing, complaining about major delays, a shortage of fresh towels, or rooms left completely untouched. They might chalk it up to a maintenance issue, but the harsh reality is these cuts are now the default. Many of the big hotel chains are reporting that on any given slow night, more than 20% of their rooms are just sitting empty. On some weeks, that number climbs to an unbelievable 35 or even 40%. I spoke with one veteran housekeeper who told me, "I gave this place 12 years of my life. Then one day, the calls just stopped. I waited by the phone, on call, but there were no shifts and no pay." Another housekeeper at a major strip resort shared that her management tried to soften the blow, telling the team to expect rotating furloughs instead of just firing them outright. But here's the catch. Those temporary furloughs have now stretched on for months. Let's be clear, these aren't just short-term layoffs. This is the complete erasure of their roles. Some resorts now openly announce that room cleaning will only happen every third day, not daily. Others have taken entire blocks offline, trimming a 900-room tower down to just 600. Departments have been merged or have just vanished. But at the end of the day, this isn't about numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about loyalty being thrown out the window. It's about workers who stayed for years, believing in promotions and union security, only to be completely blindsided. "I poured my life into this job, working late nights and extra hours just to prove my worth," one housekeeper shared with me. "And now they tell me I'm not needed." It's a gut punch, especially since our real money comes from that overtime, not the tiny base salary. When they slash your hours, it's not just your income that gets cut in half. It's your sense of self. The emotional weight is crushing. Being told there's no room for you to clean, it feels like they're saying you no longer matter. And the hotels? They know exactly what this does. They see how losing cleaning staff devastates the morale of the entire behind-the-scenes crew. Yet, the corporate logic remains cold and calculated. Shutting down entire towers is all about protecting the image of their high-end floors and slashing expenses. But when the housekeepers disappear, the very heartbeat of hospitality fades with them. The hallways fall silent, the rooms remain dark, and another piece of the authentic Vegas experience just flakes away. Down on the casino floor, you'll find 8 dealers with no cards to shuffle. These aren't just employees. Casino dealers are the living icons of Las Vegas. They're the ones who create the thrill, the faces full of charisma, the very soul of the gaming floor. For decades, landing a job as a dealer was a ticket to a stable, respectable life in this town. But now, in 2025, so many of them are walking away from tables that have simply vanished. With foot traffic slowing to a crawl, the gaming revenue on the Strip has taken a nosedive. In just one recent period, the number of visitors plummeted by 7.8%, a nearly 8% drop compared to the year before, this past March of 2025. Unsurprisingly, gaming revenue followed suit, sliding down 4.8% in that same time frame. And the casinos? They're reacting with lightning speed. They're quietly letting dealers go all across their properties. The Fontainebleau, for instance, cut dozens of its table game dealers, and it's a story you hear at multiple hotels. Dealers are telling me about going through long stretches with no open tables, no shifts, and absolutely no work. But this isn't just about fewer customers. There's another, more sinister force at play. Automation is hitting the accelerator on these layoffs. We're talking about electronic table games. These are machines that can take the bets, track the results, and even handle the payouts. They're popping up all over the Strip, and every single one of them reduces the need for a living, breathing dealer. Even the trade schools that train new dealers are feeling it. They're reporting a massive drop in enrollment because prospective students just don't see a future in it anymore. I spoke to one veteran dealer who said, "Just last month, I was working a shift every single night. Now, just 2 months later, I'm lucky if I get 1 shift a week. Management tells us it's just seasonal, but I've got eyes. I can see the new machines rolling onto the floor." Another dealer chimed in, saying, "You spend months in classes, you invest in yourself, you think you're building a future, and now I just watch the tables disappear disappear one by one. The remaining workers are now fighting for fewer and fewer spots as casinos merge their pits and close off entire corners of the gaming floor. Or they're rotating dealers through unpredictable shifts, completely erasing any seniority they've built up over the years. Fallback positions are gone. Sure, some have been offered a spot in the cashier's cage or a back office job, but a lot of them turn it down. They didn't train for years to sit in an office. They trained to be on the floor. For them, this is more than a job change. It's a complete severance from their identity. A dealer is a performer. They have to read the players, control the rhythm of the game. They narrate the entire experience. To lose that isn't just to lose your income, it's to lose your voice. And unlike a valet or a housekeeper, a dealer's skills don't easily transfer to another industry. Gaming is all they know. When you look at the whole of Las Vegas, tens of thousands of dealer hours are just vanishing every single week. Some properties have wiped out their entire pit teams in one fell swoop. Others are just running skeleton crews in the pits, and only during the busiest hours. The dealers, who were once the very essence of the Vegas brand, are now just casualties of a corporate cost-cutting frenzy. The bottom line is this: when the gaming floor shrinks, the one job that defined this city is the first to go. Dealers who are left without a table aren't just being laid off, they're being erased from the very postcard image of Las Vegas. And just a few feet away from the empty pits, where drinks used to flow for winners and spectators alike, another Vegas staple is quietly drying up. Number 7 on our list, the bartenders who are now serving ghost bars. In Las Vegas, bartenders have always been the absolute lifeblood of the nightlife. They're not just pouring drinks, they're masters of their craft. They're storytellers, they're performers with a bar top for a stage. Their real money never came from a base salary, it came from the tips, flowing in from happy customers sipping cocktails under the glow of the neon. It wasn't long ago that a packed lounge at midnight could easily mean hundreds of dollars in your pocket, but these days, so many of those bars just feel empty. For one, the cocktails cost a lot more. Over the last few months, drink menus up and down the strip have seen prices jump by 10 to 15%, just so the casinos can keep up with inflation and their own staffing costs. And patrons are definitely balking at those prices. As a result, foot traffic in the lounges is dropping off a cliff. I'm hearing from so many local bartenders that they're having entire shifts cut or their whole night's work just canceled at the last minute. I heard about one bar in a mid-level resort that completely eliminated its evening bartender shift on weeknights. The manager flat out told the staff that the sales numbers just weren't hitting the minimums needed to justify keeping them on. Another bartender shared this with me. You used to walk into your shift knowing you were going to be slammed with back-to-back orders all night. Now you walk in and the first question in your head is, did I even make enough in tips tonight to cover my ride home? These ghost bars are becoming the new normal. You see entire sections of lounges roped off, cocktail menus getting shorter and shorter, and bartenders who used to be hired months in advance are now just sitting by the phone on standby. This downturn is hitting the late night crowd the hardest. The bartenders who always relied on those big after midnight tips. To make up for it, some lounges are desperately trying to push things like expensive bottle service or exclusive VIP food packages and weekend specials, but let's be real, the profit on those is risky and totally inconsistent. And just because you're pushing a more expensive product doesn't mean anyone is actually going to show up to buy it. And let me tell you, the emotional toll is just staggering. For a bartender, it's not just about mixing drinks, it's a core part of their identity. You're losing a piece of yourself, your very presence. I heard about one bartender who was also handling their social media, and management just pulled her aside and said, "We just don't need you on Wednesday nights anymore." Let's break it down. Most bartenders in Vegas are pulling in around $11 to $13 an hour before tips, according to 2024 data. When the crowds disappear, the tips evaporate, and suddenly that base pay can barely cover the essentials. When these ghost bars become the new normal, the industry loses its soul, and bartenders are erased from the city's story. The neon lights on the bars are still glowing, but inside, the volume has been turned way, way down. And with that quiet, the craving for the amazing meals that once defined these nights is fading too. 6 restaurant closures right on the strip. It's devastating when you remember that Las Vegas remade itself into a food lover's paradise, with celebrity chefs, incredible buffets, and cuisine from all over the world. That whole food scene was a huge part of the city's appeal, drawing people in for more than just gambling. But now, that entire sector is shrinking, and it's happening at an alarming speed. The mid-tier restaurants and the iconic buffets, they're the first to go. In 2025 alone, we saw at least 22 restaurants in the valley close their doors for good by the halfway point of the year. The Luxor's Buffet, a place that was an absolute institution, was gone by March, bringing the number of buffet options on the strip down to a paltry 8. And don't think for a second the high-end places are safe. Julian Serrano Tapas at the Aria? It was shuttered in February of 2025. Then came the news about Carlos and Charlie's at the Flamingo. It's closing its doors for good on November 18th, leaving 79 employees, including all the bartenders, completely adrift. We're talking servers, cooks, hosts, porters, the whole crew. A few of the union folks might get placed elsewhere, but for most, there's no safety net. This is so much bigger than just a few restaurants shutting down. This is about entire work families vanishing overnight. These are dining workers, servers, bussers, and line cooks who are losing the very foundation they built their lives on. All across this city, there are homes that relied on those restaurant paychecks. Now, those same homes have been thrown into utter chaos. I was talking to a chef the other day, and he told me, "We're cutting hours, not firing people, yet. But every week there are fewer shifts. Our kitchen is getting leaner, our staff is getting smaller. And that leaner kitchen? It means going from 5 chefs down to just 2. It means eliminating prep crews altogether, or shrinking the menu down to nothing just to save on labor. Buffets are especially in the crosshairs because their labor and food costs are absolutely astronomical. So for the casinos, closing a buffet is a cold, hard financial calculation. But the moment those lights go out, entire departments get wiped out. The dishwashers, the cooks, the buffet attendants, all dismissed in an instant. For the people who've spent decades in these roles, the emotional devastation is just impossible to describe. Some longtime servers told me they were basically told, just be grateful for the good years you had. Others were just let go without a single word of warning. The shock of it all is immediate, but it's the uncertainty that lingers and haunts you. All in all, this restaurant collapse feels like a slow, painful bleed out of the strip's dining scene. Every single closure chips away at the army of workers who operate behind the curtain of glamour, leaving thousands to just watch as their livelihoods flicker and die in the city lights. With the kitchens going cold and the dining rooms sitting empty, that chilling silence is now creeping towards the stages. Number 5. The vanishing entertainment crews. The shows in Vegas have always been the beating heart of this city. The spectacle, the performance, the sheer scale of the production. But in 2025, that heart is beginning to fail. A toxic mix of falling ticket sales, rising costs, and smaller audiences is shutting down entire productions overnight. And when a headliner cancels, the first shockwave always hits the people you never see, the ones backstage. The crews, the ushers, the set designers, the lighting techs, the sound engineers, all of them lose their jobs in the blink of an eye. Take what happened with Misbehavin' Mavericks at the Plaza. It shut down its entire run after the July 6th show in 2025, all because the funding dried up. Some shows are just going dark until further notice, while others are dissolving entirely, never to return. You'll see a legendary act suddenly slash its schedule from 5 nights a week down to 2. And just like that, 3 nights of work for the entire crew vanishes into thin air. A lighting technician told me, sometimes they ask you to show up and not get paid. I've built my whole life in this industry. Now they're telling me there is no show. Another stagehand said to me, production budgets are cut to the bone. We used to have backup crews ready to go. Now we don't even have replacements if someone calls in sick. It's not just the performers. We're seeing entire ecosystems collapse. The costume makers, the choreographers, the riggers, all these jobs that are tied directly to the shows are just disappearing in huge numbers. Resorts are cutting residency contracts left and right, scaling back nightly performances to save a buck. The damage is amplified because live entertainment has such a massive overhead. Shows need huge upfront investments in stages, rights, and staff. And if those ticket sales don't deliver, well, the whole thing comes crashing down. And the financial hemorrhage is only getting worse. You see, for decades, Las Vegas spun this incredible tale, with spectacular shows lighting up the desert every single night. But now, a lot of those stages are just silent. Those grand curtains that once drew thunderous applause now just hide empty parking lots or cavernous forgotten wings of theaters. And behind every single one of those Vegas spectaculars were dozens of people you never saw. The unsung heroes like the wardrobe crews stitching up torn costumes in the dead of night. You had pyrotechs practicing those explosive cues down to the very last second, and ushers patiently guiding wide-eyed tourists past those plush velvet ropes. And let me tell you, these weren't just some summer jobs. No, these were seasoned professionals. People with years of hard-earned experience who are now being completely ghosted by an industry that's just shrinking away. And when these incredible entertainment crews disappear, you have to understand, the city itself starts to lose its very soul, because the first lights to go out aren't the ones on the marquee, they're the ones backstage, long before the audience ever has a clue. And for these crew members, having to stand by and watch your entire industry just evaporate into thin air, well, that might just be the cruelest cut of all. The sound of applause might be the first thing to fade, but back in the shadows, it's the quietest workers who are the next to vanish. Which brings us to number 4, the casino security and support staff. A casino is so much more than just the glitz and glamour you see on the floor. It's really a complex, living machine humming away behind the scenes, powered by security guards, cage cashiers, vigilant surveillance operators, and the ever-present maintenance crews. These are the people, the hidden workforce, that literally keep every single one of these massive resorts from collapsing into total chaos. But as the flood of visitors dwindles to a trickle, this essential backbone is being quietly, methodically trimmed away. The casinos have started slashing guards and other support roles, all in the name of saving a buck on labor. We're hearing that some properties are even consolidating their surveillance rooms, which basically means fewer eyes are trying to watch over even larger areas. And the cage workers? The folks handling all the cash, the chips, the payouts, the accounting, they're being shuffled around, pushed into new roles, or just shown the door entirely. Even the maintenance teams are being stretched dangerously thin. You know, repairs that used to be done in a matter of hours are now dragging on for days. Here's a really telling example. When the Poker Palace over in North Las Vegas announced it was shutting down for good, just like that, about 126 employees across all kinds of roles, we're talking security officers, casino cage cashiers, and floor staff, were laid off. See, security staff don't usually make the 6 o'clock news, so when they start to disappear, most people don't even notice, but you feel their absence almost immediately, in the slower service, in the growing security gaps, and here's the really insidious part. Many workers aren't even being officially laid off. Instead, they're just taken off the schedule. An employee looks one day and sees they have fewer shifts, then the gaps between their assignments get longer and longer, until they're stuck in this limbo of indefinite on-call status. I heard this story about one casino worker at a major strip property who told reporters they hadn't seen their name on a single work roster for months, even though they were still technically an employee. And believe me, the consequences of a thinner security presence just ripple outwards. Suddenly, the wait times just to get in the door start to balloon. That reassuring, visible presence of a guard or an escort, it just evaporates. Then the maintenance starts to slip, leading to busted fixtures, elevators that are on the fritz, or hallways with dimmed, flickering lights. It all just chips away at the guest experience. And for the support staff who are left, it's a nightmare. They're forced to work harder for less money, or they just get squeezed out of the picture altogether. But there's something else happening here, a kind of symbolic loss. Look, being on the security or support team was never the most glamorous job in Vegas, but it was reliable. It was a steady paycheck. These jobs were the bedrock of a stable hospitality ecosystem. So losing them isn't just about cutting costs, it's the very infrastructure of the place beginning to crumble. Just try to picture it. You walk into a casino and right away you notice there are fewer security guards in uniform. You glance over and see banks of empty surveillance monitors, or you catch a glimpse of a maintenance crew just scrambling to keep up behind the scenes. Those are the signs of a property running on fumes, just trying to survive. For these workers, their exit is a quiet one. It's stealthy. They don't make the news, there's no big announcement, just a sudden silence on the schedule and one final paycheck. When the security guards start disappearing without anyone even acknowledging it, that's when you know this city is in far deeper trouble than most visitors could ever imagine. And while fewer staff are inside guarding the doors, there are now even fewer people waiting outside to give you a ride home. Which leads us to number 3, the rideshare and taxi drivers. Not too long ago, the streets of Las Vegas used to just hum with the constant motion of cabs and rideshares. Every casino entrance, every hotel curb, every single busy intersection was a golden opportunity, a potential fare. But now, a lot of these drivers are finding themselves sitting for long, idle hours, with dwindling rides and earnings that barely scratch the cost of fuel. Drivers are reporting that they're seeing maybe half the demand they used to. Take Uber driver Roxana Salguero, for example. She says she used to easily average over 30 rides in a single day. Now, she's lucky if she manages 15, and the pay is even lower. Another veteran, a taxi driver named Paul Luake, described this past summer as, and I quote, "the slowest I've seen it in all his years behind the wheel." A huge part of the problem, of course, is that there are simply fewer tourists. The official numbers from the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority showed tourism was down about 12% year over year this past July of 2025 compared to July of 2024. And a drop like that, it hits the drivers first, and it hits them hard. Their entire livelihood depends on airport runs, hotel pickups, and taking people on excursions. But there's another piece to this puzzle, and that's the fact that their own operational costs are just skyrocketing. Gas prices, vehicle maintenance, insurance, it all just eats away at what little they're making. In fact, some drivers are saying that it now costs them more to work a shift than they actually earn. One report I saw noted that drivers are just quitting the gig entirely because the math just doesn't work anymore. The costs simply don't justify the rides. And for those who try to stick it out, their only real hope is to chase the weekend crowds, like those major events or the mad rush at the airport. But as more and more events get canceled or scaled back, those chances to make a living just disappear. Now, driver after driver is telling the same story. They're looking for another way to make ends meet. "This is my only job," one of them confessed to reporters. "But now I'm seriously looking into another option as well." For so many of them, this complete collapse of dependable ride demand is so much more than just a pay cut. It threatens to upend entire households. I mean, when you're counting on half your income from driving just one shift, losing that revenue is a catastrophic risk. It also completely changes what the job even is. Suddenly, it's all about idle hours, dead miles, and sheer unpredictability. Waiting on the side of the road just becomes part of the daily routine. These drivers, who once hustled from fair to fair, are now just sitting idle in parking lots, endlessly scanning their apps, just waiting for a match, for anything. In a city that was built on constant movement, tourists, late-night rides, airport arrivals, and departures, the drivers are always the first to feel it when things slow down. In this countdown, they're like the canary in the coal mine. When the city's lifeblood starts to clot, the drivers are the first to vanish. But when the rides finally stop and the sidewalks stay eerily empty, a much bigger disruption becomes impossible to ignore. Number 2, the conventions collapse. Thousands of jobs gone. It seems like just overnight, Las Vegas went from being the undisputed king of conventions. Every single year, tens of millions of business travelers, trade show attendees, and conference speakers would flood the city. And the corporate teams, they poured into the city. Hotels, catering companies, temp agencies, restaurants, shuttle services, they all rode that massive wave of events. But now, that wave is crashing down hard. In 2025, the very same convention halls that were once booked solid for years in advance are now seeing mass cancellations. The big tech expos, the medical summits, the auto shows, so many of them have been postponed or just relocated entirely. These cancellations are wiping out entire streams of income practically overnight. Hotels are losing massive room blocks. Restaurants are losing countless reservations. And the temporary workers? They're losing weeks of promised pay. One major trade show, which was scheduled for April 2025, pulled out with less than 6 weeks' notice. The ripple effect was immediate. The hosting hotel had to cancel 3 entire room blocks. Its staffing agency was forced to cancel the contract. We're talking about over 300 temporary workers, front desk staff, AV technicians, event crew, all of them sent home with absolutely no guarantee of any future work. At the same time, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority is reporting that visitor volume dropped a staggering 11.3% in June of 2025 compared to the same month in 2024, with the number of international visitors down a devastating 13%. Hotel occupancy has declined by nearly 15%. Turning off the convention traffic is like shutting off a core valve of the city's revenue. Conventions were once the thing that guaranteed midweek occupancy, those days when tourists aren't really roaming the strip. Hotels could fill their floors even on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, but now, those midweek bookings are simply vanishing. The luxury suites that once held corporate executives now just stand empty and dark. The staff who were scheduled for event setups suddenly find themselves with nothing to do, and the workers who relied on those contract gigs, the event ushers, the AV crews, the booth builders, the logistics drivers, they are staring at massive empty gaps in their calendars. Many of them are being forced to completely tear up their financial projections for the year, scrambling to find any alternative work they can. Some are starting to drive for rideshare companies or are chasing odd jobs, doing anything just to make rent. This collapse is laying bare a brutal hidden fragility. The Vegas economy is so deeply dependent on thousands of these temporary fleeting events. The strip resorts, the banquet halls, the temp agencies, the logistics firms, they all hang by the thread of these conventions. And when the conventions disappear, thousands of jobs vanish right along with them. This isn't some slow burn either. It's like a sudden, total blackout in the rooms, on the stages, and in the corridors that once hummed with endless activity. And in the context of this countdown, the collapse of the convention business isn't just about job losses. It's a massive warning flare, showing just how sudden and how deep this descent can truly be. Number 1, the biggest blow of all, hotel closures and mass layoffs. This is the very heart of the crisis. When the hotels themselves start shutting down or laying off entire departments, it doesn't matter what your role is anymore. The entire foundation just erodes from beneath you. Entire hotel towers are going dark. Resorts are pausing their operations and whole departments are just being swept away. The Tropicana's closure in early 2024 is such a stark, painful example. Once an absolute icon, it just ceased operations, displacing about 700 workers, many of whom had given decades of their lives to that property. The closure of the Mirage followed soon after, shuttered in July of 2024, costing more than 3,000 employees their jobs. And you have to understand, those closures were not isolated incidents. They are signals of something much worse. MGM Resorts started making cuts, completely eliminating concierge services across multiple properties on the Strip, which resulted in approximately 30 layoffs. The Venetian announced an internal reorganization, laying off nearly 50 workers in the process. And several other properties like Resorts World and the Fontainebleau have also issued wave after wave of staff reductions. And these layoffs are reaching far beyond the entry-level roles. Managers, supervisors, and even mid-level leadership are not safe. There are reports that suggest MGM made cuts to its security teams. The cuts just keep accumulating. Some of these closures are intended to be long-term, while others are supposedly temporary. But for so many of these employees, temporary quickly starts to feel terrifyingly permanent. You see it happening. Resorts are sealing off entire wings, halting their round-the-clock operations, and just mothballing whole floors. Departments that were once the heart of the operation, they're either swallowed up by others or just vanish completely. And the emotional toll? It's impossible to ignore. One day your coworkers are there, and the next, they're just gone. The lobbies start to feel hauntingly empty. You see uniforms hanging in lockers that will never be claimed again. For the ones who are left, they have to walk past those hollow signs promising closed for renovations. You can still see a faint light from under the doors, but behind them, it's just pure darkness. And when the very foundations of the city start to crumble like this, you realize it's not about losing one job at a time anymore. This is about what's left of the Strip's very soul. After all, these hotels, they are Las Vegas. So when those iconic towers start going dark, when these mega resorts begin to shrink, it tells a chilling story. A city that was built for millions is now folding in on itself. And for the workers caught in the middle, this is about so much more than a paycheck. It's about losing their place in this city, losing that sense of belonging, and losing faith in the dream they were sold. People who poured decades of their lives into this place are now just watching their entire world dissolve. The cuts are hitting hard, and they are relentless. For so many, it ends with one last heartbreaking glance at the lobby before those doors swing shut behind them for good. And with every person who leaves, with every shift that's canceled, the Strip itself is starting to flicker like a dying neon sign. So what's the takeaway from all of this? These 10 jobs that are vanishing aren't just job titles. They were pillars of this city's identity. Las Vegas used to be a place that promised stability, a sense of community, a real path to a better life. But that promise now feels incredibly fragile, like it could shatter at any moment. Can Vegas recover? Perhaps. But one thing is for sure, it will never be the same city again. As more and more of these jobs disappear, the people who built this town are either stuck in limbo or forced to leave for good. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever worked in Vegas? Tell us your story in the comments. Let us know your zip code, what you did, what it was really like. We're going to feature a few of your stories in our next video. And hey, while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Coming up next, we're diving into the city that's trying to steal Vegas's crown and finding out where all these former hospitality workers are going to build new lives.